Are you writing a mystery novel or thinking about writing one? If so, my checklist about the crucial aspects of this genre will help you. I'll get to that in a minute. I'm at work on a mystery myself. My previous books have been historical novels and thrillers, including my latest, The Man from Spirit Creek. But this is my first straight-ahead mystery. What's the difference between a thriller and a mystery? Well, there's a lot of overlap. Both center on a crime, and thematically, the essence of both is that a terrible wrong has been committed in the world of the main character, and it must be righted to restore balance and harmony. A mystery almost always starts with a dead body, and always leads to an investigation by the main character, the sleuth, whether that's a cop or a kindergarten teacher. And it climaxes in the eventual revelation of the murderer. These conventions apply whether the story is a psychological mystery, a police procedural, or a cozy. In a thriller, the stakes are usually higher. A whole community might be at risk, sometimes a whole planet, and so is the suspense and the danger. There is often a looming fatal deadline, and at a thriller's climax, the hero must take a big personal risk that finally defeats the antagonist. Readers know these conventions, and they expect to see them fulfilled. Don't misunderstand, conventions are not cliches. A cliche is the same old situation used to fulfill the convention, but there can be breathtakingly fresh ways to fulfill the convention. That's why I've been reading widely in the mystery genre, to study trends and breakthroughs, and to avoid reinventing the wheel. Here are 5 mysteries that have really stood out to me as page-turners. The Widows of Malabar Hill by Sujata Massey. Set in 1920s India, this story's tremendous fascination springs from its depiction of the exotic world of 3 Muslim women, all widows living in full purdah, and the appeal of its main character, Bombay's first female lawyer, whose dedication was forged by her own traumatic marriage.
Mm-hmm. But I'm remembering that what was very important for me is there was a brilliant book published about the history of law in India during colonial times. And its author, this legal historian, Dr. Mitra Sharafi, is at the University of Wisconsin. Oh. And so after I read her book, I wrote to her, and she actually she was kind enough to read my manuscript.
Oh, that's lovely.
So every courtroom scene was vetted by this expert who has just written so much about it. So that was a really important key for me because I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah.
Field of Blood by Denise Mina. I'm a big admirer of Scottish writer Mina and her gritty tartan noir fiction, whose Glasgow setting book list calls spiky, gray, and grim. Although those are apt descriptors, they don't do justice to the majesty of Mina's writing. The Publisher's Weekly Review says it best. The brilliant Mina may have invented a subgenre, moral suspense. She spins the complexities in the rough music of her working-class Scots, unsparing of brutal details, but unfailingly elegant in her humanity.
Because it used to be all you could talk about if you had a female protagonist was the fact that they were female. And then all you could talk about was the fact that they weren't treated the same as the men. And now you can have a female protagonist and it's almost incidental that they're female because people don't comment on their gender all the time. And it just becomes another slight factor, but they're not tied down the way they used to be into this corner of being a female protagonist. And I think a lot of people who have female protagonists are women writers, and it just feels more realistic to write about a woman than to write about a man in the central role. But it doesn't all have to be about, she discovered the murderer because she happened to go and get her legs waxed.
Dreadful Water by Thomas King. Thump's Dreadful Water is a Cherokee ex-cop trying to make a living as a photographer in the small town of Chinook in the northwestern United States. King, who lives about a mile from my house, writes about the mild-mannered Thumps With such wit and charm, I was captivated.
I do have that kind of problems. I'll start a book without having any idea where it's going. It's a bad habit. I wouldn't recommend it for young writers. And then I'll rewrite the first chapter over and over and over again until finally I get some kind of traction. It's like being stuck in the snow and ice out on the prairie. Just spin the tires. Yeah, exactly.
A Dangerous Fiction by Barbara Rogan. I couldn't resist this story because of its setting. The New York publishing world in all its glamour, gossip, gall, and glory. The characters are richly complex, their dialogue sophisticated and tart, and all of this in a tightly written, suspenseful mystery that kept me turning pages to the last paragraph.
You said that mysteries have been the hardest to write.
Yeah.
Why and how?
It's a mystery.
Well, they're very hard to plot. You have to be.
Thank you.
They're really hard to plot, and you have to get everything right. You have to keep all the characters in the mix as potential suspects. Everyone has to be a very ambiguous character because you have to believe that it's possible that this is the character who actually did it. So you have to keep that. Just juggling a lot of balls and keep a lot of balls in play. And you have to play fair with the writer, with the readers. You have to plant clues, but you also have to keep them from paying attention to those clues. So there's a lot of sleight of hand that goes on.
Right?
Red herrings, right.
How do you do that? How do you do your plotting?
Well, I do plot things out. That's what I teach in my writing classes. Especially with a mystery, I wouldn't know how to start without it. How? I start with the general idea, and I know where I want to start, and I know where I want to end up. I know who did it the whole time, and then I flesh out. I add in additional characters. I flesh them out. I give everyone a motive where conceivably they could have done this thing.
Agent Running in the Field by John le Carré. The latest novel by this best-selling master of spy lore is technically not a mystery, but a thriller. But I include it here because I cherish le Carré for his unflinching focus on the corrosive corporate and political powers who leash our lives, the heartbreaking authenticity of his characters, and the grace and wisdom of his prose. And at its center, there is a mystery.
What is writing to you?
To be truthful, it's the whole of life. It's the imaginative world in which I live. I can populate these hills when I go for walks with the characters of my imagination. It's reconnection with childhood to a great extent. The making of heroes and villains really belongs to our early lives, and later on we have muddied perceptions of people. And I suppose I do both those things at the same time, really. For me, the writing life is the only life. That's all I know now. I mean, that and my family. We have very little social life.
Le Carré's wife, Jane, is at the very heart of his stubbornly non-computerized writing process.
These are original pages, more or less.
And you leave yourself a lot of room down there.
Yes, I always leave a lot on the left-hand side. And this is the rewrite of the rewrite, and so all of that bottom paragraph is gone. And then I start snipping bits out. I live with a stapler and a pair of scissors. The lovely thing writing by hand is you can see exactly where you're going. I don't make plots. I don't, in advance, I don't make great march routes and things like that. I actually try and throw people into a messy situation and see how they'll sort it out.
While you're writing?
While I'm writing. So the whole adventure is one I share, as it were, with the reader.
So here's my 5-point checklist of the major components of a compelling mystery. Number 1, multiple suspects. The more characters who fall under suspicion, the better. Not only does this keep the reader guessing who done it, it also gives the author opportunities to create original, arresting characters, from the eccentric to the malevolent. Number 2, escalation of the danger. A dead body is the inciting incident of any mystery novel. And then, as the main character investigates leads in this crime, the jeopardy escalates. Perhaps there's a second murder victim. Or perhaps the main character is personally threatened. Or perhaps someone they love becomes endangered. Number 3, active reader involvement. Successful mystery authors let the reader piece together information. Readers want to follow subtle clues dropped throughout the book. They relish deciding whether a character is telling the truth or lying. They're eager to sift multiple possible explanations. Number 4, red herrings. Hunting dogs used to be trained by placing a dried herring, which turns red after being smoked, on the trail of the prey, so the fishy scent would confuse the dog. So in fiction, a red herring means a clue or a piece of information intended to be misleading or distracting. A compelling mystery story scatters red herrings throughout to keep the reader from correctly guessing the culprit of the central crime. This escalates the tension and the suspense. Number 5, a satisfying climax and resolution. A satisfying mystery climax may leave the reader feeling, I saw that coming, or I didn't see that coming. In either way, it makes perfect sense, giving X, Y, and Z. The book's ending answers questions the story has spun, or reveals truths about characters who were falsely suspected. The revelation of the killer's identity never feels like a trick. And ideally, the climax relates clearly to the book's beginning, its inciting incident. I hope this sparks exciting ideas for your mystery novel. Check out my online video course, Your Path to Writing a Page-Turner. It shows you how to create a novel in any genre that excites publishers and thrills readers. The course is a Udemy bestseller. I'd love to see you there. Happy writing.